Hare Krishna and welcome to Stories Online. Thank you very much for your kind presence as we continue associating with Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, chapter 4, verses 23 to 32. Vidura approaches Maitreya. Om Jnanatime Vandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Radhapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Tam Sanjeevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaskute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Pastatyadi Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarvashastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnyarya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enrich with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga, you are actual Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshashurayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namaskute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you unattains transcendental bliss, for your syllabus rain pure love upon the reader. You always be served by everyone for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bando Mad Sangye Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namaskute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, my teacher, my great wealth, O my deliverer, my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai nakti ni chachataraka hanamun chakata chinmam premna rikate ospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, forgive our saintly and unsaintly, O uplifted the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest, my heart, my throat, accompanying pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yutonvayaditaratas Chartya Swabhina Swarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yat Prati Sargo Mrisha Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kokam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading person out of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma, original living being. By him, even great sages and demigods are placed into illusion as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him did the material universe is temporarily manifest by the reaction of three modes of nature are perfectual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanopayasha sabhya kala vasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrita. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above always disturbed. Narayan namaskritya narachevam naratamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudhirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God in Narayan, unto Nar and Narayan, Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum soparodharmo yatho bhakti radokshaje ahituki aprati yatayatma suprasiditi. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanities, that by which man can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yaklusa Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the person of God, Shri Krishna, one immediately causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti Tattvavidas Tattvam Yat Gnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance, Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shoshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchisyan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. Otherwise, upon sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinvaram Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryadantastoya Badrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personal Godhead, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the full devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment. Enjoyment from the heart of the devotees develop the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prashu Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloker Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtiki. By regular attendance in classes of Bhagavatam, by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all the disturbance of the hearts are almost completely destroyed. In loving service under the person of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs is established an irrevocable fact. Yetavan Sankhya Yoga Vyam Swadharmam Parinishtaya Janmalabha Param Pumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the person of God at the end of life. Akama Sarakama Va Moksha Kamo Dariditi Brain Vakti Yogena Yajade Purusham Param. A person who has broad intelligence, where they be full of all material desires, without any material desires or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole personality of God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing from Srimad Bhagavatam, based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome back. Let us cover any feedback, if anybody has any feedback from the last session, anything that you remembered from the last session, anything that caught your attention from the last session, please let us know in the chat. So we have been discussing the section of Vidura approaching Maitreya Muni, and we heard about the disappearance of the Yadus, that it is arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada shared with us one important lesson in regards to their disappearance, that they can never be influenced by intoxication, but the Lord used them to teach the danger of intoxication. That even the associates of the Supreme Lord, if they are not careful, they can be influenced. And if they can be influenced, then what to talk about ordinary living entities or sadhakas. So therefore, one should be very, very careful. Then we heard the description of Uddhava and Maitreya Muni meeting Lord Krishna. And it was an interesting discussion between the Lord and Vidura, the Lord trying to also teach Maitreya Muni. So that was also wonderful. And now we are at the section of Uddhava and Vidura's interaction. So we're going to be covering verses 23 to 32. Vidura sought spiritual knowledge from Uddhava and Uddhava's special role after disappearance of the Lord. Gracious Hare Krishna, please guide why Uddhava feels that his confidence has contradictions that could feel like puzzling. So we read, and I need to recap the specific statements. Maybe, Ray, you can find the specific context that Srila Prabhupada is talking about that, paste in the chat, and then we'll address that at the end. Just need to refresh the proper context. Okay, text 23. Sukho vacha ityudavat upakarnyan sudram dushahan vadam gnanena sammayat shata shokam upaditam buddha. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilations of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. Purport. Vidura was informed that the result of the battle of Kurukshetra was annihilation of his friends and relatives, as well as the destruction of the Yadu dynasty and also the passing away of the Lord. All these hurled him into bereavement for the time being. But because he was highly advanced in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to pacify himself by enlightenment. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, due to our long association with bodily relationships, bereavement on the count of the annihilations of friends and relatives is not at all astonishing. But one who has learned the art of subduing such bereavement with higher transcendental knowledge, but one has to learn the art of subduing such bereavement with higher transcendental knowledge. The talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset, and Vidura was now further advanced in knowledge due to his association with Uddhava. So the lesson that is imparted in this purport is bereavement is normal and natural, especially for those who are conditioned souls attached to this body. When we lose our loved one's association, then bereavement is a natural consequence of that. But with higher transcendental knowledge, that bereavement should not endure. It should not continue year after year after year after year after year. No, that bereavement should be subdued, should be short-lived with higher transcendental knowledge. And what is that higher transcendental knowledge? That our loved ones don't die. The soul doesn't die. So if the soul doesn't die, then the soul is still existing somewhere in Krishna's creation. Yes, we're missing that association, but that personality, that person who has left is still existing. I normally give the example if if your friends are in a room and all of a sudden your friend just gets up and go to the next room, you don't start crying. Because he's just gone to the next room. So similarly, when somebody leaves, they just went to the next room of Krishna. Krishna's got unlimited rooms. Some rooms within the universe and some rooms in another universe. And the soul just gone to another room. That's all. So this is how one can rise above bereavement. Dhirastatra namuyati. One needs to become dhira, sober. This is sober. We may lament the loss of advanced souls, pure souls, like the spiritual master. And it may be a painful experience, but at the same time, we also need to become more attached to the instructions of the spiritual master, which is then also non-different from the spiritual master. So our association now begins to solidify on the basis of Vani. And if one just focuses on the physical form of the spiritual master, only the Vapu, and does not strengthen one's relationship with instructions of the spiritual master, Vani, then when the spiritual master leaves, which is inevitable, one will find it very difficult. You'll find that in that case, you leave the process and you will not continue. So therefore, transcendental knowledge and the instructions of Lord Krishna, instructions of the spiritual master, should become the foundation of our life. 24. Satam Bhagavatam Vrajantam Kauravarshava Vishrambad Adyatatedam Mukyam Krishna Parigrahe. While Uddhava, the chief and the most confidential among the devotees of the Lord, was going away, Vidura, in affection and confidence, questioned him. Vidura was much older than Uddhava. By family relationship, Uddhava was a contemporary brother of Krishna's, while Vidura was an elderly as Krishna's father Vasudeva. But although junior by age, Uddhava was much more advanced in devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, he is described herein as the chief amongst the devotees of the Lord. Vidura was confident about this, and thus he addressed Uddhava in that higher category. That is the way of courteous dealing between two devotees. So here we see the etiquette in devotee dealings. It is not by age that makes one necessarily more advanced. It is not by gender that makes one more advanced. It is not by how many years you've been practicing that makes one advance. Yes, these may be criteria or even management position to determine some sort of seniority, but ultimately advancement is based on one's Krishna consciousness. To what degree is one Krishna conscious? So one could be few years in the movement compared to someone who may be 10 years, 20 years in the movement. But the person who's 5 years or 10 years in the 5 years in the movement, who's younger, or let's say who's not practicing for more years, he may be far more advanced. Why? Because in his previous life, he may have been practicing more, many more years and more rigidly. So here we see between Vidura and Uddhava, Prabhupada is making the point that Vidura was elderly as Krishna's father Vasudeva. And Vidura was older than Uddhava. So even though he's older, he's still addressing Uddhava as, let's say, more senior, more advanced, chief amongst devotees. He didn't feel, how can I put myself lower? I'm more senior. No. Those who are Krishna conscious, they do not consider senior or junior. They only looking at the level of Krishna consciousness. The more Krishna conscious, the more advanced, the more senior. One devotee, Amarendra Prabhu also quotes this. He says, senior doesn't mean, it's like age or position, etc. No, senior means how many years you've seen Krishna. That's senior. 25. Vidura Uvacha Jnanam Param Swatma Raha Prakasham Yad Aha Yogeshwara Ishwaraste Vaktum Bhavan no Hati Yad Di Vishnu Britya Brityartakartas Charanti. Vidura said, O Uddhava, because the servants of Vishnu, the Lord, wonders in the interest of serving others, it is quite fit that you kindly describe the self-knowledge with which you have been enlightened by the Lord. Prabhupada in the purport talks about this aspect of servants of the society. Servants of the Lord are actually servants of the society. They have no interest in human society other than to enlighten it in transcendental knowledge. They are interested in imparting knowledge of the relationship of the living being with the Supreme Lord, the activities in that transcendental relationship, and the ultimate goal of human life. So if we consider ourselves to be servants of the Lord, to be Krishna conscious, to be devotees, then this is our duty. This is our identity. This is our responsibility. This is our dharma. That we are actually servants of the society. And what does it mean to be a servant of the society? That we have no interest in human society other than to enlighten it in transcendental knowledge. They are interested in imparting knowledge of the relationship of the living being with the Supreme Lord, activities in that transcendental relationship, and the ultimate goal of life. We are interested in imparting knowledge of Abhideya, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. Sambandha, knowledge about our relationship. Abhideya, activities of that relationship. And Prayojan, the goal. This is all we're interested in, nothing else. One time, Naranayan Prabhu shares how he was sitting with Srila Prabhupada. Behind the desk, Prabhupada was sitting on the opposite side, and then there were some ants, or even one ant. Well, he says that Prabhupada pointed and says, you see the ant. And Naranayan Prabhu couldn't see the ant. So he didn't want to say yes because he couldn't see the ant. And he didn't want to say no because he didn't want to act foolish. That there may be an ant, he can't see it. So he made like, yes, like, and then Prabhupada said, you have a duty towards that ant. And now he was even more bewildered because now not only can he not see the ant, but now even has a duty towards that ant. And then Prabhupada said, your duty towards that ant is to make that ant Krishna conscious. So our responsibility is to see, or is to reciprocate, to interact with all living entities, with the whole society in a way that will help their Krishna consciousness, even all non-human species. Like if there's ants, they cannot understand Krishna consciousness, but we can chant to them. And by chanting the holy names to them, then next life they can get a human form. They can become devotees. So this is our duty. That is the real knowledge which can help society achieve the real aim of human welfare. Knowledge in the matter of bodily necessities of eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, transformed into various branches of advanced knowledge, is all temporary. A living being is not the material body, but an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and thus revival of his self-knowledge is essential. Without this knowledge, human life is baffled. The servants of the Lord Vishnu are entrusted with this responsible work, so they wander over the earth and to all other planets in the universe. Thus, the knowledge which was received by Uddhava directly from the Lord deserves to be distributed in human society, especially to persons like Vidura, who are highly advanced in the devotional service of the Lord. Real transcendental knowledge descends in disciplic succession from the Lord to Uddhava and from Uddhava to Vidura and so on. Such supreme transcendental knowledge is not possible to achieve by the process of imperfect speculation as performed by so-called learned mundane wranglers. Vidura was anxious to know from Uddhava that confidential knowledge known as Paramam Stitim, in which the Lord is known by his transcendental pastimes. Although Vidura was older than Uddhava, he was anxious to become a servant of Uddhava in the transcendental relationship. This formula of transcendental disciplic succession is taught by Lord Chaitanya also. Lord Chaitanya advises that one receives transcendental knowledge from anyone, whether a Brahmana or a Sudra, a householder or sannyasi, provided that the person is factually conversant with the signs of Krishna. A person who knows the signs of Krishna is factually a bona fide spiritual master. 26. Udo vacha nanu te tattva samradya rishi kausharavo ninteki shakshad bhagavata disto martya lokam jihasatam. Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipable for the reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by the personality of Godhead while he was about to quit his mortal world." So now we heard about one principle of etiquette. Now we're going to learn a second principle of etiquette. Vidura approached Uddhava, "Please share transcendental knowledge." Uddhava, he didn't immediately say, "Okay, come on, teach you, now, come on, tell you, because I was fortunate to be with the Lord." No, he directs Vidura to go to Maitreya Muni. Now, it's interesting, and we heard this before, between Maitreya and Uddhava, from the last set of verses we read, it was clear that Uddhava was more exalted. Yet, he is sending Vidura to Uddhava, to Maitreya Muni. So why? What is the principle? Prabhupada in the purport sheds some light on this. Although one may be well versed in the transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality. So this is a principle or etiquette we should be very careful. Maryada Vyatikrama, surpassing, impertinently surpassing a greater personality. According to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of Maryada Vyatikrama, because by doing so, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, piety, and blessings of all the world. Now, someone may say, ah, why should I be bothered about this? Well, if you transgress and break this principle of Maryada Vyatikrama, then practically your duration of life, your opulence, your fame, your piety, and blessings all are destroyed. That is disastrous. To be well versed in the transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Very wonderful point Prabhup's making. To be well versed in transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Uddhava, being well aware of all these technicalities of transcendental science, advised Vidura to approach Maitreya Rishi to receive transcendental knowledge. Vidura wanted to accept Uddhava as his spiritual master, but Uddhava did not accept the post because Vidura was as old as Uddhava's father, and therefore Uddhava could not accept him as his disciple, especially when Maitreya was present nearby. The rule is that in the presence of a higher personality, one should not be very eager to impart instructions, even if one is competent and well versed. So this is the principle. If they are seniors, then they should be the ones to give the instructions or whatever is required. And one should not transgress this principle of Maryada Vyatikrama. Sometimes in the institution, there may be more qualified souls, but the temple authority may allocate you to do some service or speak. And in that sense, you get permission and then you continue because you are following the authority that is there in the temple, and therefore it does not break or go against Maryada Vratikram. But otherwise, we should try to follow this principle and be careful of this principle. When Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Mayapur and they were celebrating when they went first time to Mayapur, after Prabhupada had preached all around the world, and he took many of his disciples to Mayapur. And there, amidst the festivities, on one occasion was Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sriramaj, Prabhupada's senior godbrother. And Prabhupada started making the point that we have preached all over the world and started Krishna consciousness. And now because he was speaking to his godbrother, because you are senior to me, I offer this movement to you so that you can now lead this movement. So here we see Prabhupada following this etiquette because his godbrother was there. And this godbrother had a wonderful relationship with Srila Prabhupada. He, in the early days, he stayed at least 6 months or 6 years, with Srila Prabhupada in Calcutta. So they had a very wonderful relationship. And Bhakti Rakshak Sriramaj, he started speaking and he said, who would have thought that Abhay Babu would have done this. Who would have thought? That person who was Grihasta, that person who was struggling to make money in a pharmacy, have children. Who would have thought that he would be the one to fulfill the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that that personality, this Abhay Babu, is the one that's predicted to spread Krishna consciousness. So he obviously glorified Srila Prabhupada in this way. So the point was that etiquette, the principle of etiquette, should be observed. So Uddhava decided to send an elderly person like Vidura to Maitreya, another elderly person. But he was well versed also because he was directly instructed by the Lord while he was about to quit this mortal world. Since both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord, both had the authority to become the spiritual master of Vidura or anyone else. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first claim to becoming the spiritual master, especially for Vidura, who was much older than Uddhava. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. So this is also a very important principle. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. One of my mentors was telling me that one spiritual master told him, you should become a spiritual master and then get about 60 chelas, Grihasta chelas, so that they can give you a debit order and you can get digital, give you dakshin. And in this way, they'll fund your needs. And then when you get old, then they may have their own house. They may look after you. They may build you a house, and all your needs will be taken care of. So you don't need to worry. So this is not proper. This is a total transgression of this point that Prabhupada is making. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but one should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. And we should also be careful, because on one hand, the so-called spiritual master will have a deviant intention, but because he is authorized and is a spiritual master, then ignorant disciples may think, oh yes, very nice, my Guru Maharaj, very advanced. So the disciples are not served, and the spiritual master will be punished. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Samad says, if such a guru is only interested in taking dakshin, then he will go to dakshin marg. Dakshin marg means south, north, south. So if you go north, then you go up to the spiritual world. If you're interested in dakshin, then you go to dakshin loka, hell. So this is the danger. And it's a good business. Sometimes you'll see people will think, well, to be a guru is nice, to be a sannyasi is nice. You can travel, you can, it's like free life. Don't need to work hard. But there's a grave responsibility for a sannyasi, for a guru. And if the sannyasi or the guru exploits that ashram, exploits that post of position, spiritual post of position, you will not be spared from the law of karma. You can never be spared from the law of karma. So one should be very careful. The Lord never tolerates the impertinence of Maryada Vyatikrama. One should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master in the interest of one's own personal gain and fame. So here also we need to be careful that if there is a senior person, you want to try to put yourself and get some fame and glory, even though there's somebody senior in that assembly. Impertinence on the part of the pseudo-spiritual master is very risky in progressive spiritual realization. So Prabhupada is warning. It's risky business. Rather you wash pots and be honest and sincere in that practice, and you will make a lot of advancement than to pretend and take a post of a spiritual master and externally even maybe be a sannyasi or a grihastha and present yourself like a guru, whereas internally you have the wrong agenda. It will be a risky business. You are not playing around with the law of the government. You are playing around with the law of the Lord. And the laws of the Lord are very stringent. 27. Shri Sukho Vacha iti saha vidurena vishvamurtir punakataya sudaya plavito ruptapam shanam iva puline yamas pasustam samusita anupav gavir nisham tatogat. Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, after thus discussing with Vidura, the transcendental name, fame, qualities, etc., on the bank of the Yamuna, Uddhava was overwhelmed with great affliction. He passed the night as if it were a moment, and thereafter went away. Purport. The word used here for Krishna is Vishwamurti. Both Uddhava and Vidura were in great affliction because of Lord Krishna's departure. And the more they discussed the transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, the more the picture of the Lord became visible to them everywhere. Such a visualization of the transcendental form of the Lord is neither false nor imaginary, but is factual, absolute truth. When the Lord is perceived as Vishvamurti, it is not that he loses his personality nor transcendental eternal form, but he becomes visible in the same form everywhere. So in Bhagavad Gita, this is one aspect of how a pure devotee sees Krishna everywhere. And here Prabhupada is making the point that it is not some fictitious form of or imaginary form of visualization. You actually can see the Lord everywhere. And you are seeing the actual form of the Lord. You're perceiving the Lord everywhere. This is complete absorption, complete Krishna consciousness. This is in love with Krishna. When you're in love with Krishna, then you see Krishna everywhere. Why? Because everything is Krishna's energies. So that remembrance brings forth the visualization of the transcendental form of the Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam Rita, when Gopakumar meets the four Kumaras, and Sanat Kumar touches Gopakumar, just by his touch, Gopakumar was able to see the Supreme Lord inside and outside. So this level of Krishna consciousness is there. And only when one is in love with Krishna, we seek the Lord everywhere. Otherwise, like atheists, they don't see the Lord anywhere. Lord, God doesn't exist. So yeah, for them, God doesn't exist because they're atheistic. And for the devotee, God exists everywhere. And he's not just in an impersonal feature that they, intellectually thinking God exists everywhere, like energy. No, they can see God everywhere because they're in love with Krishna. 28. Rajovacham Niktanam Upagateshu Vrishnibojesha Adirata Uttapa Yutapa Peshu Mukhya Satukatam Avishishta Udavoyat Darirapi Tatyaja Akritim Triya Disha. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasty, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? So now Maj Parikshit, after hearing these episodes, an inquiry manifested in his consciousness that Krishna took everyone away. Practically the whole Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were taken away. Why did Krishna leave Uddhava behind? Prabhupada's purport. According to Sri Jiva Goswami, Nidanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ni means the highest, and Dhanam means opulence. And because the abode of the Lord is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidanam is to indicate that all the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were direct associates of the Lord. And after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. So we already heard that this was all orchestrated. This pastime of the Yadu dynasty destroying each other was orchestrated by the Supreme Lord. And here we have further evidence to prove that, yes, this wasn't just mundane material fighting in bewilderment and intoxication. No. Their fighting was just rounding up, and they all went back to the spiritual abode. Srila Vishwan Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akritim as pastime. A means complete, and kritim means transcendental pastime. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there's no question of his changing or quitting his body. Now, this is also a very important point. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. We, in the conditioned state, we have a material body and we are spiritual beings. So the soul has a body. In the spiritual world, the soul does not have a body. The soul is form. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual world, he does not have a body. He does not have a form. He is form. The Supreme Lord is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. It's not like there's the soul and then there's the body. The soul is spiritual, it is Sat, it is Chit, it is Ananda, and it is Vigra. It has a form. Now, when the soul, the jiva, conditioned soul, the jiva comes to this material world, it takes on a form, subtle and gross. When the Supreme Lord comes to this world, he does not take a form. He appears in his form. He appears as he is, Swayam Bhagavan. But here we have an episode of the Lord leaving his body. So therefore, Prabhupada, with the guidance of Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, is explaining this and clarifying this. Because there are those that believe that God left behind a material form. So Prabhupada continues. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body. Note the use of the word seems. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world. Even the Lord abides by the rules of the planet, of the universe. And therefore, to align and keep in align with the rules of the material world, the Lord seemed to take birth and seemed to leave. But the pure devotees of the Lord know very well the actual fact. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of the Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishnu Chakravarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of the acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery. But to the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of the great acharyas are quite fit. The word upagateshu is also significant. All the members of Vrishni and Bhoja directly reach the abode of the Lord. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure devotees of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. Sometimes, due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are to be promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. But the Vrishni and Bhojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Prabhupada said many devotees will go to heaven. Why? Because they are attracted. Nandanan gardens, beautiful damsels, somaras, unrestricted enjoyment. You have children that immediately are youthful, no nappies changing, sleepless nights with raising babies. There's no growth, so to speak. Like boyhood, babies, then small growing like boy, then youth. One is immediately a youth, and even at old age, instantly old age. So, the duration in heavenly planet is very, very long. There's no diseases. So it's very enticing to think what type of experience must be there. I like to go there. So that opportunity is there. But the Bhoja and the Vrishnis, they were attached 10% to the Supreme Lord. They had no attraction to the material planets, and therefore they went directly. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amara Kosha dictionary, Akriti also means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badrik Ashram after his departure. And Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead. or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. So the devotee of the Lord is not interested in his own liberation. He's not interested in his own agenda. Here we see everyone is going back to God and with the Lord. And you would think, well, Uddhava would have also said, my Lord, but everyone's going with you. Can't I also come with you? That is not pure devotional service. Pure devotional service means whatever the Supreme Personality Godhead wants. So if Krishna wants me to stay, Krishna is giving me a signal to do some service, I'll stay behind and do that service. This is pure devotion. Not like, oh, but Krishna, you're taking everyone away there to the spiritual. What about me? It's like unfair. You don't like me, and you go into some depression. I'm not going to surrender to you anymore. Nope. The pure devotee understands this is the Lord. He knows what's best. He wants me to do this for his pleasure. Happily do that. 29. Shri Shuka Uvacha Brahma Sapa Padeshena Kalena Moga Vanchitam Samritya Swa Kulaps Spitam Chakshan Deham Achintayat. Sukadeva Goswami replied, my dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea, but the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. Purport. In this verse, the word Chaksham is very significant in relation to Lord Krishna's leaving his body. Since he is the eternal form of existence, knowledge, and bliss, his body and his self are identical. Therefore, how is it possible that he would leave his body and then disappear from the vision of the world? There is a great controversy amongst the non-devotees or Mayavadis about the mysterious disappearance of the Lord, and the doubts of those men with poor fund of knowledge has been very elaborately cleared by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Krishna Sandarbha. According to Brahma Samhita, the Lord has many forms. It is stated herein that the Lord has innumerable forms, and when he appears within the vision of the living entities, the Lord, as Lord Krishna actually appeared, all such forms amalgamate with him. Besides all these infallible forms, he has his universal form, as manifested before Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Here in this verse, the word spitam is also used, which indicates that he left his gigantic universal form called Virat Rupa, not his primeval eternal form, because there is hardly any possibility of his changing his form of Satchidananda. So, the Lord left behind his Virat Rupa and then ascended to the spiritual world. The Mayavadis, the non-devotees, they say Krishna was an ordinary person. And one proof is that he left behind a material body. And then that body had to be cremated. So there is no question of him being God. Whereas we hear from the Bhagavatam, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Lord ascended back to the spiritual world, and even some demigods could see and some demigods couldn't see. So this is the mystery. This simple understanding is at once realized by the devotees of the Lord. But those who are non-devotees, who perform hardly any devotional service to the Lord, either do not understand this simple fact or purposely raise a controversy to defeat the eternity of the transcendental body of the Lord. Why? Because of envy. This is what envy does. This is due to the defect called the cheating propensity of the imperfect living entities. By practical experience also it is seen up to the present day that the Lord's transcendental form is worshipped by devotees in different temples. And all the devotees of the Lord actually realize that the form of the deity in the temple is non-different from the form of the Lord. This inconceivable performance of the internal potence of the Lord is described in Bhagavad Gita. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. In the Padma Purana it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahayam indriyai. The name and form of the Lord cannot be perceived by material senses. But when he appears within the vision of the mundane people, he assumes the form of a Virat. This is an additional material exhibition of the form and is supported by the logic of a subject and its adjectives. In grammar, when an adjective is away from the subject is modified. The subject it modifies does not change. Similarly, when the Lord quits his Virat Rupa, his eternal form does not change, although there is no material difference between himself and any one of his innumerable forms. In the 5th canto, it will be seen how the Lord is worshipped in the different planets in his different forms, even now, and how he is worshipped in different temples of this earth also. Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur have very elaborately explained this incident of the Lord's disappearance in their commentaries, quoting various authentic versions of the Vedic literatures. We purposely do not include them all here to avoid an increase in the volume of this book. The entire matter is explained Bhagavad Gita as quoted above. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. So when people say, well, I don't believe that, or I can't understand that, I don't think it's like that, no problem. Because the Lord reserves the right to expose himself to everyone. That's all. So not everyone will understand, not everyone will get it, not everyone will accept. We also should be very careful when we exposing people to Krishna consciousness. We should give them as much as they can digest. Just like if somebody's sick, you don't want to give them 5 plates of prasadam. Or even 2 plates of prasadam. Maybe even 1 plate may be too much because they're ill. They will not be able to digest that. So we give as much as they can digest. Otherwise, we will be causing disservice. He always keeps himself out of the vision of non-devotees who are devoid of love and devotion. And thus he puts himself still further away from the Lord. The Lord appeared on the invitation of Brahma, who prayed before the Shirodakasai Vishnu, and therefore, when the Lord appeared, all the forms of Vishnu amalgamated with him. And when the mission was fulfilled, all of them disintegrated from him in the usual course. So all the incarnations and forms came to Krishna's body, and Krishna appeared. And one of the forms of the Lord was the Virat Rupa. And then when the Lord disappeared or left this world, all the forms manifested in their respective position, including the Virat Rupa, which belongs here and stayed here. Tati. Asma lokad uparate mai gnanam mad ashrayam arhatyurava evadam sampratyatmavatambara. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava the foremost of my devotees is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. So here the Lord is speaking, and the Lord now is glorifying Uddhava, that he's the one that can be entrusted with knowledge about me. So here again, we see the Lord's compassionate nature. Krishna already spoke Bhagavad Gita. There was no need for him to give more knowledge. But the Lord's heart of compassion is always concerned about the living entities in this world. So even at this point, when the Lord is leaving, the Lord is concerned about distributing transcendental knowledge to get us out of this material world. And for that, he required a proper receptacle, a proper representative who would receive that knowledge and disseminate that knowledge as it is. Proper in the purport says, Gnanam Mad Ashrayam is significant in this verse. Transcendental knowledge has three departmental divisions, namely knowledge of the impersonal Brahman, knowledge of the all-pervading Supersoul, and knowledge of the personhood of Godhead. Out of the three, transcendental knowledge of the personhood of Godhead has special significance and is known as Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana, specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. This specific knowledge is realized by pure devotional service and no other means. Bhagavad Gita 18:55 confirms this. Bhaktya Mamba Vijanati Yavan Yas Yasmi Chasmi Tattvataha. Only persons engaged in devotional service can factually know the transcendental position of the Lord. Uddhava was concerned to be the best amongst all devotees of that time, and therefore he was directly instructed by the Lord's grace, so that people might take advantage of Uddhava's knowledge after the disappearance of the Lord from the vision of the world. This is one of the reasons why Uddhava was advised to go to Bhadrik Ashram, where the Lord is personally represented by the Narayan deity. One who is transcendently advanced can gain direct inspiration from the temple deity, and thus a devotee of the Lord always takes shelter of a recognized temple of the Lord in order to make tangible advancement in transcendental knowledge by the grace of the Lord. So the last point is very instructive for us, that one who is transcendently advanced can gain direct inspiration from the temple deity. And thus a devotee of the Lord always takes shelter of a recognized temple of the Lord in order to make tangible advancement in transcendental knowledge by the grace of the Lord. So we should acknowledge the local temple, recognized temple, where we have installed deities like Sri Shinitai Gaurahari, and we should take shelter of them. They are personally present, and we should take shelter. We should develop a relationship, and in this way, by serving them, we can make tangible advancement. 31. Noda van vapiman nyuno yat guner nardita prabhu atomad vayunam lokam grahayan ihas tishtatu. Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way, because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the Supreme, of the personality of Godhead. Purport. The specific qualification for becoming a representative of the Lord is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. So here is another glorious qualification. When one says, I am representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, it's easy to say that. What qualification do you have to become a representative? And the qualification is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. That means you are above the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. This is the qualification. The highest qualification of a person in the material world is to be a Brahmana. But since a Brahmana is in the mode of goodness, to be a Brahmana is not sufficient for becoming a representative of the Lord. One has to transcend the modes of goodness also and be situated in unalloyed goodness, unaffected by any qualities of the material nature. This stage of transcendental qualification is called Suddha Sattva Vasuddha or Vasudeva. And in this stage, the science of God can be realized. As the Lord is not affected by the modes of material nature, so a pure devotee of the Lord is also not affected by the modes of nature. That is the primary qualification for being one with the Lord. A person who is able to attain this transcendental qualification is called Jivan Mukta, or liberated, even though he is apparently in material condition, even though he is apparently in material conditions. This liberation is achieved by one who constantly engages in transcendental loving service of the Lord. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 187, it is stated, Iya yasya hare dasya karmana manasagira nikilasvapya avastatsu jivan mukta sauchate. Anyone who by his actions, mind and words lives only for the transcendent loving service of the Lord is certainly a liberated soul, even though he may appear to be in a condition of material existence. So a conditioned soul who is in this material world can be fully engaged in transcendental service of the Lord with mind, body, and words, completely dedicated to the Supreme Personality of God's service. This then transforms his body from matter to spirit. And therefore, even though he apparently seems like a conditioned soul, but he's liberated. This is called Jivan Mukta. Uddhava was in such a transcendental position, and thus he was selected to be the factual representative of the Lord in his body, in his bodily absence from the vision of the world. Such a devotee of the Lord is never affected by material strength, intelligence, or even renunciation. Such a devotee of the Lord can withstand all onslaughts of material nature, and therefore he is known as Goswami. Only such Goswamis can penetrate the mysteries of the Lord's transcendental loving relation. Relationships. 32. Evam triloka guruna sandishta sapta yonina badara baddar yashrama ashadya harim ije samadina. Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Person of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge and spiritual master of the three worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badrik Ashram and engaged himself there in trance to satisfy the Lord. Lord Shri Krishna is factually the spiritual master of three worlds, and he is the original source of all Vedic knowledge. It is very difficult, however, to understand the personal feature of the absolute truth, even from the Vedas. His personal instructions are needed in order to understand the personality of Godhead as the supreme absolute truth. Bhagavad Gita is the evidence of such transcendental knowledge in gist. One cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. Lord Krishna exhibited this specific mercy towards Arjuna and Uddhava while he was in the material world. Undoubtedly, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight. And yet, to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. The Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate knowledge which he had not spoken even in Bhagavad Gita. Persons who are attached to the words of the Vedas may also know from this verse that the Lord is the source of all Vedic knowledge. So Uddhav Gita is there in the Bhagavatam 11th canto, and it's a continuation. What wasn't spoken in Bhagavad Gita is spoken in Uddhav Gita. So it's also nice to read that section of the Bhagavatam. One who is unable to understand the Supreme Person of Godhead by going through the pages of the Vedas may take shelter of one of the Lord's devotees, such as Uddhava, in order to advance further in knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Brahma Samhita says that it's very difficult to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the Vedas, but is easily understood from a pure devotee like Uddhava. Taking mercy on the great sages who lived at Badrik Ashram, the Lord authorized Uddhava to speak on his behalf. Unless one has such authorization, one cannot understand or preach the devotional service of the Lord. While present on this earth, the Lord executed many uncommon activities, even traveling in space to bring down the Parijata from heaven and recover the son of his teacher, Sandipani Muni, from the region of death. Uddhava was certainly informed of the conditions of life on other planets, and all the sages were anxious to know of them, just as we are anxious to know about the planets in space. Uddhava was particularly deputed to carry a message to Badrik Ashram, not only to the sages of that place of pilgrimage, but also to Nara and Narayan deities. So here we see an interesting statement that the deities are personalities. Because the Lord sent a message. Such a message must have been more confidential than the knowledge described in the pages of the Vedas. The Lord is undoubtedly the source of all knowledge. And the message dispatched through Uddhava to Nara and Narayan and other sages were also part of the Vedic knowledge. But they were more confidential and could be sent or understood only through a pure devotee as Uddhava. Since such confidential knowledge was known only to the Lord in Uddhava, it is said that Uddhava was as good as the Lord himself. Every living entity can, like Uddhava, also become a confidential messenger on the same level as the Lord, provided he becomes confidential himself by dint of loving devotional service. Such confidential knowledge is entrusted, as confirmed Bhagavad Gita, only to the pure devotees like Uddhava and Arjuna, and one has to learn the mysteries through them and not otherwise. So yes, we can also become confidential messengers. And it is not rubber stamped. Okay, you are a messenger. No, there has to be qualification. And the qualification is loving devotional service. Nothing short of pure devotional service. One cannot understand Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam without the help of such confidential devotees of the Lord. According to Srila Vishwan Chakravarti Thakur, that confidential message must have concerned the mystery of his departure and the annihilation of his dynasty after the end of his appearance in the mundane world for 100 years. Everyone must have been very anxious to know about the mystery of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, and that message must have been explained by the Lord Uddhava and dispatched to Badrik Ashram for information of Nara Narayan and the other pure devotees of the Lord. So the mystery of the Lord's disappearance was shed by the Lord to Uddhava, and Uddhava then distributed that understanding. And we are getting that understanding mercifully through this disciplic succession, Jiva Goswami, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and coming to us through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, through his Bhaktivedanta purports. So that which was spoken 5,000 years ago in the most confidential circumstances to the most glorious devotee Uddhava was completely liberated above the modes of material nature. We are getting today in the 21st century of Kali Yuga, where the modes of material nature are ripened and influencing everyone. And here we are being exposed to that most glorious, wonderful understanding of the Lord. Vantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo. Are there any questions or comments? And Ray Prabhu, you didn't put the accept of your question from Robert's purport, so we can at the context. Let's just see, because I remember we're speaking about this. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please type in the chat. Let me just see if I can quickly find this reference. Right. Mm. I think we'll try to find that next week or when we have our next class, and then we shall recap that point. Verse 16, right, let's see verse 16. So verse 16 says, the pure devotees of the Lord are not much concerned with philosophical speculation in regards to transcendental knowledge of the Lord, nor it is possible to acquire complete knowledge of the Lord. Whatever little knowledge they have about the Lord is sufficient for them, because devotees are simply satisfied in hearing and chanting about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. This gives them all transcendental bliss. But some of the pastimes appear contradictory even to such pure devotees. And thus Uddhava asked the Lord about some contradictory incidents in his pastimes. The Lord is described as having nothing to do personally, and it's actually so, because even in the creation and sustenance of the material world, the Lord has nothing to do. It seems contradictory then to hear that the Lord personally lives the Govardhan hill for protection of his unloved devotees. The Lord is the supreme Brahman and absolute truth, the person of Godhead appearing like a man. But Uddhava had doubts whether he could have so many transcendental activities. Okay. And then we're hearing about all the different contradictory points. So your question is, Uddhava feels his confidence as contradictions that could feel like puzzling. So is your question the fact that if Uddhava is a pure devotee, how is he still inquiring or clarifying the contradictions that are in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord? Please expand on your questions. You can also unmute if you want to clarify. Okay, so is that your question? All right, so let's first cover Shamananda Prabhu. Thanks, Prabhu Maharaj, for a nice class. For the Lord's service, we can embrace facilities, but not for ourselves. Else there will be consequences. Nice lesson from Vidura, Maitri Muni, and Uddhava. Yes. And it's a risk because we are so conditioned to enjoy. So even in Krishna consciousness, we start to develop the mentality of enjoyment, even though enjoyment is there. Prabhupada wanted devotees to have nice prasad, sumptuous prasad, nice, wonderful kirtan. So we should always remind ourselves we are servants of Krishna, and first and foremost is how can we give pleasure to Krishna? Like you could eat nice prasad, and you're eating the nice prasad for sense gratification, and even though it's prasad, you get purified. Or you could be eating Krishna prasad with the consciousness that each morsel Krishna tasted. So in this way, the Krishna consciousness has to always be there, giving pleasure to Krishna. Right, so in this case, Prabhupada would, in terms of Uddhava and inquiring, it's not that Uddhava is confused. Uddhava is basically clarifying for us, just like in Bhagavad Gita. A few places Prabhupada writes that Arjuna is asking these questions not for him, he's asking these questions for those coming in future. Like in the 11th canto, about 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is asking Krishna, please show me your universal form. He doesn't need to see the universal form. So like that, the pure devotees, they, and like Uddhava, because they are fully 100% surrendered, their actions, their inquiries is completely under Krishna's dictation. And whatever Krishna does through the medium of his devotees is there for us to learn and extract lessons. Consider even Krishna himself sometimes act like he's confused. Uddhava was making the same point. That sometimes it's strange, Krishna, that you go to, you call Vidura, you even call me, and then you're inquiring, what should I do? Please tell me. You know everything, yet you're inquiring. You go as a messenger. So in this way, Krishna, he uses his devotees to glorify them, to extract lessons for us. So they may act confused. They may act contradictory. They may even act conditioned. And therefore, we always learn from those who are coming in the line of disciplic succession and who are perfect representatives of how to perceive such interactions. I hope that sheds some light on that. All right. Thank you very much for everyone's presence. Until next week, there won't be any class because we're having the 8-hour or 6-hour kirtan in Lens. We'll continue after. Take full advantage of the month of Damodar. Krishna's starting his sale every year without fail. He's having his sale, so try to take full advantage of this wonderful, glorious month. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gopuramanande Hari Hari.